But you was keeping an eye on things.
I was keeping an eye on things just to make sure. No, really, because of course the Stephon Clark case and everything that's happened, I just couldn't really tear myself completely away. It is not only, an interesting time in Northern California right now. This is a nationwide. When I'm seeing it on CNN, when I'm seeing our story on all the shows at night, you're going, okay, there's something happening, and all eyes are on Sacramento right now. And the very latest we know today is Stephon Clark's funeral day. He'll be laid to rest in a couple of hours, starting at 11 o'clock. Kirsten, you were at the church this morning where this is going to be happening.
Yeah, no, I was at the church this morning where this is going to be happening, and you were absolutely right. There is such a national presence. I think representatives from CNN was there, ABC News was there. There were all of these people, and it's like, there's still this family, and they're going to have to grieve. I think you were going to talk about that in the 9 o'clock. They're going to have to publicly grieve. We are here for every step of the way, and it kind of, we're all human beings. I work in the news. We're all human beings. So what if there was so much media attention surrounding my funeral or your funeral? It's like, my thoughts, my prayers go out to that family that they have to do this on a national stage.
And more specifically, the brother. We've seen a lot of Stevante.
Exactly.
Stevante Clark. We saw him charge the city council meeting, which I watched every second of that meeting on our way home. You guys watched it as well. I'm sure we all watched it. And to hear the different sides of I don't even want to say argument. It's just everyone's story in this. Why they feel a certain way about not only the death of Stephon Clark, but the conversation that has happened after it, to watch Stevante grieve publicly, to your point.
That's what it is.
And when it seems like rage to some people, to others in his community, this is what it is. This is our reality. To others, well, why did you have to do that? Why did you have to cuss in the mayor's face? You aren't getting your point across that way in the right way. Others saying, well, excuse me, what is the right way to make you feel comfortable that I need to grieve? So I understand all the different angles of this. We do know that, and I mentioned Stevante going up to Mayor Steinberg and yelling in his face and doing that whole thing at the council meeting. Stevante has since apologized, correct?
I think he needed to.
He needed to. Let's listen. Let's listen to his apology.
Nobody deserves to come in here and disrespect his house. I disrespected his house. I owe that man an apology.
So there's his apology, and you can catch the full interview with Francis Wang on ABC10.com. It is a riveting side and reaction that we are hearing from him now. I saw him on CNN last night with Don Lemon. At one point in the conversation with Don, he just got really angry. Again, this is him grieving publicly. He just said, say his name. Don, say his name. And Don refused to say his name in that moment. And it was just an interesting moment, because here we are on national television, and all he wanted was for Don to say his name. And the question, some would ask, was that right or wrong for him to not say his name? This was Don's interview with him to talk about the funeral. And Stevante came off, I guess, a little hot to him, but he came back from commercial break and just said, I don't know what it's like to be in his shoes. He is welcome back on the show any other time, because they had to stop the conversation. But a lot is happening. We know that the Kings have said we're going to collaborate with different organizations in town, and we are going to help build what it is that Stevante wants, which is the 24-hour recreational center, the library for the kids, for the kids, for the kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not just Stevante that's making those calls. I was at a vigil Friday night. That is that community. These are the things that we want to build our community. It's the Meadowview neighborhood where Stevante was from. And when I was there, I'm new to the area. It looks like a predominantly black community. There are probably depleted resources. There's not fresh, like if I needed to get fresh produce, I'm not going to be able to get that out of that community. I don't know how far away the library is. There's like technical things, like, when you go to a library, is there access to like iPads and stuff? Because kids are doing more than just books. So the fact that this community is asking for that, and the Kings and so many other organizations are stepping in to help fill those voids in that community, I think that is how we move forward. That doesn't bring a life back. That is so awesome that people are working together to try to make this area a better place to live.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news on this one, but this is just, call it stage 2 of grief. We have 10 stages as a city, as a country. We're grieving for the many murders that have happened over the years. And this particular one, while it's in the national spotlight right now, God willing there isn't another one, but chances are there will be. And Chief Hahn is setting an example here for everybody. But at the same time, the resources that you're talking about, the resources that Stephon's brother is asking for, Stevante, that's going to take time too. And I feel like people are going to become frustrated if they don't see a change very, very quickly. And I want people to stay calm and understand that change is coming. And people in our comments right now are saying that they think it's big of Stevante for stepping up and apologizing. But Stevante, moving forward, is going to have to continue to show that face of calm in the midst of trying to get all of the action points that he wants actually actioned on.
No, it's a good point. And going to your point.
Grief can do ugly things. You know, I know grief personally. Like I lost my dad when I was in high school, and grandparents, and things like that happen. I don't know how I would react if my sister would have died. I hope that I wouldn't act like that. But I've seen grief do some ugly, ugly things, and I just feel for these people that have to do that on a national platform.
Yep.
I want to go back to the conversation you brought up about the neighborhood when you were in Meadowview and what you witnessed when you were there. I have not been to that region, but I know, Rob, you're here to talk a little bit about
Friday.
it.
Friday,
We were both there.
we were both there.
Yeah, no, I saw your Instagram post, and I think that's a great thing, especially if you're new to town, to get out and to understand the different ways in which Northern California operates. You have an interesting perspective, and it's something called redlining.
Okay, so this may be new to a lot of people. In fact, this was new to me about a year ago. And I came about this through maps. I'm a map guy. I'm a nerdy map guy.
Okay.
And so I follow
Through
different
and
regions
through.
of the internet where people, overlay things on Google Maps. And it's just an interesting way to interact with your community.
Sure.
You learn more. So anyway, what redlining is back after the Great Depression, there was a lot of federal money coming in through the FHA, Federal Housing Authority. And they were trying to figure out where should people invest money? There are good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods because some of these loans are backed up by the federal government. Anyway, and you can look this up yourself, we're going to show a map of Sacramento. So as these maps were made in the 30s, 40s, 50s, up to the 60s, they decided some neighborhoods are bad and some neighborhoods are good. And the bad ones were designated by a red box there. The green ones are good neighborhoods where you want to invest your money. Now remember, these maps, okay, you can see the original source at the bottom there, and then it's now, in modern times, been overlaid on a Google map, so you can search this yourself. I will put the link on my Facebook page later on today. But you may notice something kind of familiar about this map. Remember, this is in the 30s, and I put a link to the description. What you can do is you can click on it, and you can go back to the original document of how they described these neighborhoods.
Okay.
And what they would classify as good things that we would classify these days as good things. Being close to schools, being next to businesses, being near the city center, all of those things were classified as good. But the other thing is that they would classify the negatives as subversive racial atmosphere.
Interesting.
Primarily based on if they were not white. And these days it's different. We view things differently these days. But back in the 30s and 40s, the powers that be viewed a large Japanese population as being a detriment to the community.
Right.
Latino population, detriment to the community. So I'd love to show the next thing. I clipped out one of the descriptions back from the 30s when they made these maps, and you could see it for yourself that it wasn't necessarily based on income or where it was located. I mean, some of these red zones back in the day, they were right. I mean, these are hot neighborhoods these days. But
What is it based on?
It was based primarily on
race.
race in many of these. And so why are we talking about stuff in the 30s? Well, what happened was the people that lived there, they couldn't get home loans.
Right.
Owning your own home is a powerful way of accumulating wealth
Yep.
and then transferring it down to your kids.
Absolutely.
So if you're in the red zone, you can't get a loan. If you want to open up a business there, you can't get a business loan. So all of these things that we view as being detrimental, now there's no businesses, people don't own their homes. Over time, from a policy that was written, mapped out, and enforced, some of these neighborhoods are still recovering from policies that were put in place so many years ago. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you may drive through Meadowview or places like Oak Park, which is being heavily gentrified right now.
Yes.
You may drive through these neighborhoods and say, what's going on here? What's up with this neighborhood? Oh my gosh. Well,
How
know
can
what?
you go from this
Exactly.
to this in a matter of seconds?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Just understand that there may actually be some reasons back in the day that we're not even aware of that are coming to light through maps and
Right.
and new ways of looking at data and trying to understand how some of this came to be. Not everything, but I just, as I always talk about on the show, is empathy. Just the more information you have
Yeah.
about how things came to be, the more you're able to empathize and understand that some of these needs in these communities may have started decades ago, and there's still some
Decades.
recovery.
They haven't
And
been
let me point out
addressed.
one more thing. I live in the Pocket neighborhood. Right across I-5 is the Meadowview neighborhood. Okay, so I'm basically neighbors with Meadowview. My wife is a photographer, so we're always looking for beautiful areas to take photos in, right?
Yeah.
Nice backdrop. So I'm looking on Google Maps. I'm like, hey, there's a park over here. There's a park over here. There's a park over here. You know, you go to the Pocket, parks are nice. You go to Meadowview, some of these parks are there's chain link around the fence. You can't even go into your neighborhood park because it's been shut off by the city. So, you know, people in the Pocket may not know that. People in Land Park may not know that because they've never driven through Meadowview.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I was there was because I was just looking at it on Google Maps. Then I understood, okay, your neighborhood park you can't go to because it is literally chained off. That is a problem. Where are these kids going to go? What's going on in this neighborhood? So I just,
There's no resources.
just you have to drive through neighborhoods, talk to people. A lot of people will be showing up at Meadowview for the first time ever. People from all over, and you know what? This is their moment to say, yes, this is about Stephon Clark, his funeral, his life, and what happened that day. But while you're here, do you want to walk around the block and talk about what else is going on?
What life is like for people here. And you know that there's a thing in Boulder, you know, we call it a super, but that's TV talk. You see it on your screen. It says, is there a racist housing policy in SAC? This is not just a Sacramento issue. This is an everywhere issue. So it's, you know, the people here, we're not going to blame the people here for something like that. Again, this policy, this is something that started decades ago, like when my grandmother was trying to get a housing loan. So it's just, you know, old policies that need to be updated. And I believe that they are trying to proactively do that. Like I can buy a house. I know people in my area, I live in Natomas, that have bought houses in certain areas. So we are making the push out, but this is the history, and it's kind of like getting a head start. If we're going to start a race and you start, I don't know, 100 feet before me, I may can run fast, and I run fast. But if we run at the same pace, it's going to be a little harder for me to catch up, and I think that's the effect of what we're seeing in these communities.
And because of that struggle, and they say the struggle is real, I mean, because of that struggle, then kids especially, right, start falling back at an early age. And so to Stevante's point, if there were resources like I think the 24-hour part of the recreational center was key. This sparked a conversation in my own household with my husband, Caesar.
Okay.
We started saying, you know what? That is so true in areas where maybe parents are working these late hours, in areas where maybe there's not two-parent homes, in areas where there could be violence happening in the house. Where do these kids go? Well, of course you're going to revert to what's happening on the streets and start gang banging maybe, or start doing things and being out in the street, doing this stuff that you shouldn't be doing because there are no other options, and now you're angry, and you're an angry young person out in the street. So what does that turn into? If you had a 24-hour recreational center that was monitored, where you could go and actually, you know what, okay, I'm going to focus, be in my own space, do my homework. You never know. At a young age, these minds are so they're so absorbing, and whatever it is around them is how they're going to.
They
end
are
up
the
being.
sponge.
They are the sponge.
We're not calling it what it is, but it's been referred to in plenty of articles and plenty of TV shows. It's structural racism, and what that looks like geographically for a region. And at not the press conference, at the community hall meeting, the town hall meeting, the woman from Black Lives Matter came up and she talked about how she would like to move back to the neighborhood that she grew up in.
She's mentioned
she
Oak
grew up
Park,
in
right?
Oak Park, but she can't afford to get back to that neighborhood. And what that means for her, what that means for the people that she's around. And it used to be a black neighborhood. She said it used to be so culturally rich. And now, as a black woman, she can't afford to move back into that neighborhood, even though she makes a good amount of money. And that's the conversation that a lot of people were trying to have at that town hall meeting.
Yes.
They were saying, we want to work hard, but the system is against us right now. We feel like we are being suffocated by the system.
Yeah.
We feel like we need a way out. And yes, one community center is great. It's wonderful.
Sure.
Is it the
It's not the
solution to the
answer.
problem?
No. What is the
Absolutely
solution?
not.
What is the solution?
That communication. We have to start making sure that the people in office reflect the conversations that have been had over the last 12 days. over the last 12
Is it
months.
power though? Because
It's absolutely power.
Is there power though within the city council? And that's what one of the members was saying when they stepped up to the plate and said, "We're preaching to the wrong crowd here because they don't have any power. It's the people above them." But how do you get there?
I think the solution is going
mayor.
to be multifaceted and multi-level. Yeah, there are going to be things, it's going to have to start with better policing, better training, knowing the community that you work in. It's going to start with fixing those redlining districts. It's going to start with empowering people of color. This is not going to, we're not going to wake up tomorrow after the Stephon Clark funeral and it's going to all be okay. This is going to be a long road ahead. But the fact that we are having the conversation is helpful. It's going to be a problem. Everyone has a bit of a solution. It's going to take us having the tough conversations, talking about race. I know a lot of people hate to hear it, like, let's not make it about race. But if we talk about race and address it, you can't really fix the problem, because if it exists, or let's just talk about how it doesn't exist. If one idea says that yes, it exists and it plays a part, bring that to the table to the other idea that says no, it's not a part in here, and let's have the conversation. It is a tough conversation to have, believe me.
Yeah.
But I believe if we at least start having the conversations, we can start finding the solutions that work for us.
Now, Chief Hahn brought this up at the very beginning of this case. 72 hours after Stephon was shot and killed, the video footage was released. He said, a year ago, had this exact same thing happened, we wouldn't have had that video footage to make the decisions that we've been making today. I will say this. If they can do that in a year at the police department, what can be done a year from today? I want to check back in with everyone. I want to make sure that we know we're holding people accountable a year from today to say, is that community center being funded? Is there
staffed correctly?
Exactly. That's important.
Are the plans in place to make this a reality for that community? And are there other organizations popping up to make sure that representatives from that community have a voice in massive public policy so that this doesn't happen again? And so that it can spread to other communities that are impacted, because Meadowview is not in a silo.
Yeah.
There are many.
I'll tell you this, growing up in predominantly black communities, black and brown communities, there is that, that relationship with the police is not always good. So I came from Shreveport, Louisiana. I went to Marshall, Texas, where they kind of had the same issue with, there's this fear and intimidation with police. I think we had probably another unarmed black man shooting.
Right.
And so what the police chief did there, and I think that Hahn did it too, they've been in schools. And I think seeing police officers in elementary schools and the communities that they serve the most, seeing those police officers in those schools, like there is an officer, Norman in North Little Rock, they started having these officers go into schools and become the friends with the kids. Like the police are not the bad guys, because if kids grow up thinking that the police are the bad guys, then you have that they're gonna have this animosity, and we need to get rid of that animosity because I believe that they are here to protect and serve. I love covering this story so many times. I love the fact that Chief Hahn came out with that video as soon as he could. I love the idea that he's trying to get transparent. I have not met this man. I've not interviewed this man. But watching some of the policies and procedures that he's bringing out, it's like he's trying. This is one of the pieces to the solution. We just got to keep it going.
And you heard over and over and over again in that council meeting, you heard most of the black community who were getting up to speak were saying that they have all the respect in the world for Hahn. So at least there's that.
Exactly.
Because my thing was, imagine if there was someone in that chair who was not respected. Like, how could you really have that conversation without there being a tough barrier to have to jump over? So at least there's that.
So in the 5 and the 6, I put into my social hit comments from a woman named Kendra, who suggested that the government find a way to hire Stevante and some of his friends, so that they can be that liaison between the community
Make them the leaders.
and the government. Is that the right role for them? She thinks it's a way for him to harness that energy that he has.
Okay.
Or do we find the leaders that are already in that community and empower them
It can be a
to be that
collaborative
role
effort.
model?
Savante's been in the media. I can see why you would want to go there, bring him in the conversation. Like the conversation has started. Let's all be happy. Like let's start this. Does he speak for every black person? Probably not. Right. So let's get him and let's get a roundtable discussion with him and so many other people who are leaders throughout the community. And it's not just the black community, other communities.
So Kimberly Morgan chimed in and said that she and her husband have always discussed having a 24-hour facility for years, if only she could get a business loan. Do we remember which neighborhood she lives in?
I think she's in Yuba City area.
Yuba City, okay. I'm not sure if they suffer from the same sort of redlining, red tape that we've been discussing.
No, Yuba City is primarily it's almost a bedroom community for Sacramento in some ways. It's got its own thing. People live there for a long time. It's got a long history with gold mining and things like that. So it wasn't these maps that you could find are primarily your big cities back in the day. And you know, and just to show you, it's not just Sacramento. You were talking about it's all over the place.
Everywhere.
What's the first thing you think of? South side of Chicago, primarily black.
Guns.
A lot of economic issues at the moment.
Yes.
A lot of gun violence to this day. Red line district back in the day. So you have to, I mean, you have to connect these dots where they are and try not to oversimplify everything. It's not just because of that, but I think I encourage everyone just to learn more about some of these things because again, I didn't even know about this until a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's all there for you to learn about. I mean, you click on this stuff and it's just amazing how you can trace things back, you know?
Yep.
And you
again,
have to want to learn and absorb
be
this
curious.
information and not hold up this shield of no.
Yep.
Everything that's being said is dramatic, not my issue, not my story. Get over it. That's not going to help the situation.
People have said in our comments plenty of times,
And they're saying
I want
it
to
right
shut
now.
this off, this conversation. I just want to shut my brain off to it. But then, if you're a parent, if you have young people around you, isn't it your responsibility to try to have that conversation and to foster an energy of collaboration and innovative thinking that allows your children or the children around you to be more tolerant? That's what I would hope.
Yeah,
I think so.
Like I said, you know, it's a tough conversation to have, and anytime the conversation is had on a forum, and then you have a public comment, you're going to have people. It's like it's a tough conversation. It kind of hurts feelings. It kind of challenges ideals that people have. That you know, everything is okay in my world, but what about your neighbor's world? If everything's not okay with there, do you want to help, or maybe you don't? And people are entitled to their opinion. Let me not say that they're not, but it is a very, very tough conversation to have. I'm excited that the conversation is being had. I hate that a young man had to die behind it. Another one because there is yet another hashtag.
Yeah, and some of the things that are being said in the comments right now, Philip Webster to say ghetto folks on ABC 10, you tuned into us. So you're here to watch it. If you're not here and you're here to name call, please leave the conversation. We're not here for it. For the others, we're not saying you have to agree with us. But to name call, you're part of the problem.
Amen.